Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining today's session on Indonesia. My name is Irma Irsyad. I'm the Principal BDM from TIQ Indonesia. Today's topic is the update on Indonesia education sector and the impact of COVID-19. I will have two other speakers joining me today. Mr. Ben Giles is the Trade Investment Commissioner from TIQ Indonesia. And we'll also have Mr. Tim Martin, the Trade Investment Commissioner from Austrade Jakarta. Before we deep dive on the session, I would like to share on a few housekeeping rules. The session will be recorded and your microphones will be muted. And if you do have questions, please type them on the Q&A box on the screen below. And we will try our best to answer these questions at the end. And moving on, I will turn to our first speaker, Ben Giles, to share on Indonesia market. Over to you, Ben.
Great, thanks a lot, Irma, and hi everyone. Ben Giles is my name. I'm the Commissioner here with Trade Investment Queensland in Jakarta. I've been here a couple of years now, and this is my third time living here, and it's still a joy to be in this country and a privilege to represent Queensland and TIQ. We've got a bit to cover today, so I'll kick off fairly quickly and just give a little bit of an update on the ground and on COVID. We've been working from home probably for about 3 months, from the middle of March to the middle of June, of course, and then the situation has probably progressively got a little bit worse, the health situation here, in particular in Java and especially here in Jakarta. We came back to the office sporadically, but then of course when the infections sort of spread from the suburbs to the CBD, we've moved back. I'm in the office now and looking out. It does look like very much as business as usual, and in many ways it is. However, from mid-June there was a transition of the reopening of the economy, and that's been extended each time. So it is still very uncertain. The positive is that the economy in some of the essential industries in infrastructure and oil and gas is still ticking along. So there is that part of the economy that's, it hasn't been a complete and total shutdown. While some of the reports and some of the criticism as well, probably at that higher government level, has been there and has been reported in Australia. At our level, at the social level, and for those who know Indonesia, there is very much that community spirit and that gotong royong, where everyone's wearing a mask. You can't get anywhere without a mask. Social distancing and protocols within offices is practiced fully. So there is that. You do take heart, and that there are proper practices in place. So that is one good thing. But it's not just a health pandemic. The economy's taken a massive hit. It is expected that for the last 15 years there's been 5% growth every year, and it's probably going to be a significant contraction to about 0%, or maybe a little bit down below that as well. 2 to 3 million people unemployed as well. So it's been really quite a hit. So the social and economic hits have been quite profound as well. The government has, of course, had a lot to handle. There's an omnibus law coming in, a number of reforms to make Indonesia a more attractive place to invest and do business. Some labour laws coming through, so that the government is really grappling with a lot of issues. The capital won't be moved, I don't think. I think it's been postponed for another 2 or 3 years as this current issue is being fought and needs to be resolved. So that's about all for that situation. I might just move on to the slides now. Thanks, Irma. Just very quickly, so I'll talk very quickly a little bit on the past, and while bearing in mind that there is, there is a reality now that it is certainly not what we're talking about in the past. But let's just very quickly go back to probably a bit on education in Indonesia. You can look at those numbers and they are, they're quite huge, aren't they? It's 45.5 million students. Higher ed is probably around 5 million. So the majority is in primary. Irma will be talking about some of these issues around infrastructure and connectivity then with some of these primary kids that are outside some of the major centres. Around 50,000 students are studying overseas, and I believe the figure of those that could afford it is up to 3 times. So there could be potential of 150,000. There are other issues why possibly they are choosing not to, but that is the magnitude of this market. And next slide, please. I love this slide here. As we all know, we hear some of the negative stories, but for Indonesians wishing to study abroad, Australia is still number 1. It has been for a long time, and it still is. And it's something that we as Australians really should be greatly proud of. It is a wonderful door opener. There are so many Indonesians here that have studied in Australia and in Queensland, and it really helps us and helps me in my job in promoting Queensland. With that enrolment pattern over the last 15 years, to the slide to the right, with the red and the blue, it really does follow, doesn't it? There was quite a drop off at the GFC, and then it rose, and now we're probably, of course, going to see those drop offs again. There have been strong growth, of course, over the years. Next slide, in vet and higher ed, and then as you can see there, it's been a steady growth over those times. This is for Indonesian enrollments in Australia. And I think for the next 3 slides, they're pretty cool little colors there. And it may not come up, but it's quite clear that, with higher ed and vet and ELICOS and schools. Thank you. When you look at that, first of all, the higher ed with the colors there with New South Wales in blue, Victoria is red. So it's, of course, over the last 15 years, you can see that Victoria has gone up a bit. The downturn has probably been WA in that blue color. On vet, of course, you can see that the blue of New South Wales has been significant increase there. ELICOS has been a general decline. I think Queensland is in the green there. But there's been a general decline in ELICOS, and that could be partly due to the fact that there is that availability more so in Indonesia. For instance, with UTS and InSearch is just one example. And then you see schools there over those 15 years has been really quite a significant drop. And that, again, is probably due to the fact that there are more international standard schools here. Using foreign curriculum, including Singapore and the Chinese, and even New South Wales, as many of you know, are licensing some of their curriculum to a Christian private school, Isepa, here in Indonesia as well. So with those enrollments, that's very quickly up to July last year. Higher ed, there was some growth there in a couple of those fields, and vet as well. It was really showing some promising growth for Australia, and of course that was flowing on then through to Queensland as well. Now, talking about Queensland, here are those numbers. So as of to June 2019, it was 22,600 enrollments, and around 5% of that was to Queensland, which is, I think, has been about the same for a number, for quite a long time. The increases have followed each other with the total. The next slide is really the flip side, and it's quite a compelling figure, isn't it? Where the number of Indonesia is ranked in Queensland of enrollments is at 22. So the top 5, the China, India, and Brazil are those top 3. Indonesia is at 22, which, it's a fair way down, isn't it? So why not Queensland? And we've I don't really want to dwell on this too much because we've seen it all, and, there are perceptions, and I'd say there's probably misinformation from both sides. which lingers and turns into probably excuses from both sides, and then also turns into reality as well. And it's probably a self-fulfilling thing. But, you know, these are all probably some valid points there, and there are some that are sort of, yeah, as I said, there's probably some misinformation as well. But, you know, the reality is, and it's what we see across the board, that Indonesia is a tough market to operate in. And that really is the reality, and time and a real investment needs to be put in there. But I'm very much a half glass full person, and I like to look at the real positives, and the Queensland-Indonesia relationship is really incredibly strong. So while those numbers at 5% do seem comparatively low to the rest of Australia, we need to keep in mind that there is local representation here, with UQ, QT, Griffith, JCU, and of course, CQU are here represented as well. You know, we've had international partnerships for several decades between universities, between academics, between faculties and their MOUs, internships, exchanges, and let's not forget the sister state relationship between Central Java and Queensland, which has seen teacher training, there've been exchanges, and of course State Queensland have come in and done the teacher training as well. And then of course in March of this year, we had CQU opening their campus here, allowing students here in Jakarta to undertake MBAs and a bachelor's in digital media as well. So when you look at that, you know, there is representation, and it is fairly strong here. How it's translated to those numbers may not be the case. However, for the broader business relationship, it's been great. What we've been doing in that past is, you know, apart from the stakeholder management role, you know, with our Indonesian partners and friends, and you know, we've been involved in some of the school roadshows, which Irma has found to be quite successful over those years. There've been missions going both ways to Queensland and back up here as well. Of course, there's just that ongoing one-on-one work, and the brand Queensland exercise that we do here, and that we continue to do as well. So that's about all for me. I will pass it on to Tim, and I will join you all a little bit later. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Ben, and thanks, Irma. Yeah, look, I'll just reintroduce myself very quickly. I'm Tim Martin. I'm one of the trade commissioners based at the Australian Embassy in Jakarta, but currently, due to COVID, I'm back in my home state of New South Wales. I just wanted to flag a couple of items today. One is Isepa, which I'm sure you've all heard about, the free trade agreement between Indonesia and Australia. And the other is a large event that Austrade are hosting over the coming 2.5 to 3 months called Isepa Business Connect. It really meshes in with education and training because, as some of you might be aware, the key outcomes of Isepa really do revolve around education and training. The agreement itself entered into force back on the 5th of July. And of course, due to COVID, we haven't been able to really advance a business mission up to market or anything like that. I mean, some of you might have been participants in business missions that we've run in other markets or in Indonesia. We often do them about every 2 years, to China, to India, to America, and certainly to Indonesia. With the delays of ratification of Isepa, we pushed that business mission that would not ordinarily be led by the trade minister. We pushed that to this year. And then, of course, lo and behold, 2020 stopped us in our tracks. So we haven't been able to run the business mission that we would have liked to really celebrate the outcomes of Isepa. So I would like to just give you a quick overview of the agreement, and then give you a little bit of an overview on Isepa Business Connect. Isepa guarantees that Australian suppliers of technical and vocational education and training, which is referred to in Indonesia as work training, can provide services throughout majority-owned Australian majority-owned businesses in Indonesia. In Indonesia, President Jokowi, he's in his second term, despite trying to control the spread of COVID. One of the key policy positions that he's taken is upskilling, training, education. So it's a really exciting market to be working in at the moment, because we know that there's an appetite for good, high quality skills and education. And that's why Isepa is so exciting at the moment. What we are now able to do as Australian training providers, training and education providers, is own up to 67% of a work training facility in Indonesia. Now, up until now, you could have a partnership with an Indonesian training provider, but you would be a minority shareholder. So now you can actually go anywhere in Indonesia. There are no geographical limitations. You can offer a diverse range of subjects. There's no real limitations, I think, in most of the key areas where Australia has capabilities. Non-award is acceptable. AQF qualifications are all accepted. IQF qualifications, so the Indonesian qualifications framework qualifications, are all able to be delivered by an Australian training provider that owns the majority of that business in Indonesia. Now, Indonesia's future reforms in the education sector will automatically be part of its Isepa obligations, which will also provide certainty for Australian education providers that any reforms will not be unwound in the future. So there are guarantees built into the agreement for Australian providers. And I think that's certainly a big step forward in the relationship, and reflects the interest from the Indonesian government in getting high quality training into the country. As Ben said, we are number one in terms of market share. So again, I think Indonesians are often looking to Australia for the delivery of training, for the delivery of education. So I think we're in a really, really good position. A couple of, Ben just asked me to maybe touch on what a couple of other states are doing as well. And I won't go into too much detail because we're a little bit limited for time, but with these outcomes of Isepa in mind, a couple of other states are really sort of trying to gear up that education and training work that they do in market. TAFE Victoria, for instance, has set up a permanent representation in Jakarta. And as a result of that, they've been winning quite a lot of work. So some of you that are on the line might have already bid for work under the Ministry of Education's Retooling Vocational Lecturers program. It's an annual program where usually vocational lecturers would be sent all over the world, including to Australia, to go and undertake short courses. Now, this year, five TAFEs won work out of that. And guess what? They were all from Victoria. So I think that presence in market that TAFE Victoria has taken has meant that they've been successful in winning work. The other one is Western Australia. And as Ben noted, their numbers are still pretty small in terms of recruitment. But what they're trying to do is amplify themselves into the market. And they've set up a really interesting consortium, the West Australia East Java University Consortium. And that reflects the sister state relationship between WA and East Java. And they're doing quite a number of really interesting things under that partnership to try and position themselves, build awareness about Australian capabilities or those particular states' capabilities. And then as Isepa becomes more socialised within the Indonesian marketplace, they're well prepared to grab some of the business. The other thing that I wanted to talk about was Isepa Business Connect, which flows on from the point that I just made about positioning for success. As I mentioned, ordinarily, every couple of years, we would do a business mission led by the Trade Minister, involvement from the states and territories. They might bring, some of their ministers and big delegations, and education and training would, of course, be one of the big streams of those events. Now, we can't do that because of COVID. So we've come up with a program called Isepa Business Connect. It's a 2.5-month digital campaign. And some of you might have received the launch email about that yesterday. Minister Birmingham officially launched it for us yesterday. And in the invitation, the launch email, you'll see a short video from him, which outlines what it's all about. Now, basically, if you don't know anything about it, if you didn't receive that email from us, you can just Google it, Isepa Business Connect, and go to the Austrade website, and it will explain a little bit more about what it is. What it essentially is a campaign that we're going to be running, wrapping the Australian branding around all of the various events that different stakeholders are running in between Australia and Indonesia. So, for instance, this very webinar that we're on right now is listed on the Austrade website under Isepa Business Connect as an example of some of the things that we're doing bilaterally to try and develop an understanding on the Australian side about what it is that they should be doing more of in Indonesia, but also from the Indonesian side to try and encourage more Indonesian business and students and importers to be looking to Australia as a trusted partner. So this campaign will run out over the next few months. We really encourage all of you to check in on our website, see if there's any events that interest you. There will be a lot of, we've reached out to TAFE Directors Australia. We've got ITECA on board as well. The GAN network, which is the Global Apprenticeship Network. A number of universities have already signed up, and they're going to be loading up content like webinars, masterclasses, and showcases that we're going to then list on our website. This will hopefully have the head-turning effect from both the Indonesian and the Australian side. On the Australian side, certainly, we're looking to get businesses of all kinds to diversify their markets and to think about other markets. And Indonesia fits right in the pocket there. And on the Indonesian side, we're trying to encourage more Indonesians to look to Australia as a supplier of high-quality goods and services. So I've probably gone over my time, Ben, so I might stop there and we can have some questions later. Thanks.
Thank you, Tim, for the very interesting insight. Here you go. So I'll be sharing on Indonesia education market update. Updates in Indonesia education. So Indonesia education closures has forced around 45 million students to study at home. And to measure the demand for studying abroad and whether there are new opportunities, we have conducted an online survey that we sent to a number of Indonesia education agents. And based on that feedback that we've received, we have compiled a number of suggestions for Queensland provider for them to be able to help Indonesia. The effect of COVID-19 education in Indonesia. There's an increased use for online learning, a growing number of learning apps in the country, and also it has caused wider socio-economic inequality. Because of this crisis, there are many laid off in the market because of people are not being able to work, and these are parents who are struggling to pay for their children's tuition fees. So in relation to that, there are a rising number of school dropouts around Indonesia, starting from Papua, Maluku, some part of Kalimantan, Sulawesi, even in Jakarta area. And the pandemic has also caused the Ministry of Education to eliminate the national exam, or also known as UN, for schools this year. So this elimination has the effect of the elimination of the UN, that the students are no longer required to submit their UN result to be able to graduate and to continue further studies. Because of this sudden change, there were confusions exist among schools on whether what standard the new student registration that the school should be based on. So this has caused controversies also and long arguments between parents and schools. And also it has created debate on whether to keep the start of the academic year as it is, that is to start in July this year, or to postpone it into January next year. But in the end, the Ministry of Education has kept it as it is, that is to start the academic year in July, provided only about 6% of the face-to-face learning are allowed for those schools located within the green zones. Those are schools located in rural areas across Indonesia, such as Papua, some part of Kalimantan, some part of Sulawesi, and so on. Whereas the rest of 94% of the schools are to continue online learning. So those schools located within the yellow, orange, and red zones. So mainly those schools are within the Jakarta and Java Islands. The online technology and Indonesian education, the challenges which are a lack of teachers and students' capacity in terms of technical ability and other factors. There is uneven spread of internet connection across Indonesia because of the limited facilities and also infrastructure. And this crisis has also caused additional cost burden for middle to lower income people in Indonesia. To overcome these challenges, the Ministry of Education has been managing a number of online learning platforms. To name one is Rumah Belajar. Rumah Belajar simply means, rumah means house, belajar means study. So a house to study for both students and teachers to be able to connect online. The ministry also managing Guru Berbagi, which is a platform where teachers across Indonesia could share their lesson plans, and Spada, which is targeted for university students. The provincial government, Jakarta, is managing SIMAK. SIMAK is an integrated information system where teachers could share the online modules for students. And another one is SMK Bisa, is for those vocational schools, students located in Jakarta. For those students who live in rural areas with no or poor internet connection, the ministry is currently working with TVRI. TVRI is the national television broadcast which air the study program for those students ranging from kindy to high schools. And also RRI is the national radio broadcast is also airing the study program for those students who live in rural areas. As some of you may be aware that WhatsApp application is widely used in Indonesia, and so far it's proven one of the most effective apps to be used for students' online learning. And apart from that, the Ministry of Education has been working with a number of edtech companies providing free access to learning contents. To name a few, those are Google's, Microsoft Teams, Quipper, and some local ones such as Ruang Guru and so on. The Ministry of Education has also allowed the school operational funding to be used for to purchase, to support internet costs for both students and teachers, and also to buy those relevant equipments to support the online learning during this pandemic. Zoom is also widely used for both local and private schools. And Telkomsel, as one of the Indonesian major telco provider, is also assisting by providing free online package for university students in their online learning process. So how well are students prepared for learning online during the school closures? So this is a very interesting survey from OECD, OECD's program for assessment for international students. The graph shown here talked about the average 15-year-old students with access to both desk and a quiet place to study at home. As you can see here, unfortunately, Indonesia is one of those lowest country with only 52% of students having access to both of these portal. There was a slight increase from 2015 from 43%. And Australia is grouped among those countries with the highest percentage. The second graph showed access to computer for both computer for schoolwork and internet connection at home. For both year in 2015 and 2018, Indonesia was rated at 19 and 24%, in contrary to Australia, which is steady at 93%. But I'm optimistic this figure has increased since this survey was conducted because of various reasons, such as increase of middle income in Indonesia and also economic growth for the last few years. How students are learning from home. This is another interesting survey by UNICEF Indonesia, which is done this year in May and June. It talked about challenges for students studying at home. Some responses said that lack of assistance from their teachers or lecturers, and not having a proper internet access. So those are the top two challenges for those students. The respondents also mentioned about not having a proper device and can't access the online learning application, as well as lack of assistance from parents. And because of these challenges that the students are facing, nearly 9 out of 10 respondents said they want to go back to school soon. And again, I'm optimistic this situation will get better soon, as soon as the COVID-19 ease out. And I'm seeing that the government is putting effort to try to overcome these challenges. And also knowing that education is one of their top priority on the list. So as Ben mentioned earlier, to measure the Indonesian attitudes towards study abroad after the crisis, we sent an online survey to 32 agents, education agents. We had 19 of them responded with 82 responses. Some of the questions we asked that whether they believe that the international education will recover after COVID-19. And more than 90% of these agents responded yes, they believe that this will recover, and they're very optimistic. The second question we asked on the changes on Indonesian student beliefs towards study abroad. whether it will change after the crisis. And more than half of the respondents said the students have become more interested, and 35% said they become just as interested. So in terms of interest from Indonesian students in studying abroad, nothing has changed. The concern is on health and safety, and because of that, they deferred their studies until next year, and very few of them opted to continue their study online. We also asked whether they are aware of how different countries handle these situations, the challenges of studying abroad. And the response said yes, they are aware, and the feedback provided for Australia, it's positive. They said that Australia is the quickest to switch to online learning. That is related to student registration procedures and others, if they compare that to other countries such as US, UK, and Malaysia. And another country that was praised positively was, along Australia, was New Zealand. We also asked whether their optimism on increasing new opportunities because of COVID-19. And majority of the respondents, 95%, said they are optimistic, very optimistic, and they suggested that the possible opportunities arising from this crisis is for online and digital programs, and the combination of both. And of course, packaged in attractive pricing structure. So based on those feedback that we gathered from the agents, we listed a number of suggestions on how Queensland could help post-COVID-19. The number one on top is a flexible payment plans, because of many of these parents are struggling to pay for their children's tuition fees. So this kind of plans would be much appreciated and would help them a lot. And also increase the presence both offline and both online and offline. Also to create empathetic campaigns that maybe show how Queensland welcome Indonesian students, testimonials of the current students studying in Queensland, and so on. They also mention for shorter and faster application process and student visas. At the moment, these agents are not sure, so most of the process are being held until everything is certain. And they appreciate that the Queensland education institutions are involving the agents on the joint online promotions, and they are hoping that this will continue even after COVID-19. And if they could be supplied with the online promotional collateral for them to be able to promote the brand to the market. And also constant communication on campus changes, such as policies, health protocols and safety and all that. And as mentioned before, create attractive online and offline program, pricing a package at interesting pricing package. And more dual degrees with Indonesian universities. We understand that a number of Queensland universities already have dual degrees with local universities, but more of that will help these agents to promote the brand to both students and teachers. So that will be my last slide, and I will hand over to Ben to talk about more on possible opportunities and the strategy to move forward. Over to you, Ben.
Thank you. Thanks, Irma. We're nearly wrapping up now. I've just got a couple of slides to just go through and then we'll go to the Q&A, and I've just noticed that we have a few more questions coming in. So yeah, just looking at some of those opportunities that we see, and it's very much flowing on from what Irma discussed before. I mean, notwithstanding some of those challenges that she's mentioned with online and some of the, the prevailing infrastructure issues, there are still those opportunities. So it's very much that blended learning package that, there are those opportunities in, among others, in English language and professional development. Again, the teacher capacity building as well. There are certainly opportunities there. Vocational training, it's certainly been harped upon for the best part of 25 to 30 years. But this issue does not go away in Indonesia, and there certainly are gaps and opportunities to provide, that added training. Yes, in Queensland, but most likely, and certainly at this stage, in Indonesia as well. So it's across agribusiness and food. So, down to food handling, that sort of process using sort of agri-tech to enhance yields. Halal certification in METs and infrastructure around the health and safety, and some areas of urban design as well, in health, hospitality and tourism, and of course in manufacturing as well. I think pharmaceutical has had that part of manufacturing, but certainly under supply chain and under good manufacturing practice, GMP as well. I mentioned before about curriculum development. Of course, there's that opportunity of potential licensing. As we mentioned, New South Wales is already licensing their curriculum to Isepa school. There are, of course, once everything clears up, then these are probably a bit more of the standard ones pre-COVID, but they'll also be post-COVID as well, with the immersion, the study tours, et cetera, and the internship and the exchanges. Incredibly important, and they mean a lot, and they do build that relationship and that long-term effort. Articulation, of course, joint degrees, research collaboration, and joint journal. I might talk a little bit more about that on the next slide with collaboration and follow on from what Tim mentioned as well. And of course, internships not just to Queensland, but also the Queensland kids coming up here at TIQ. We host 2 to 3 interns every year from Queensland universities. We need all of the friends we have, and there are little mini foot soldiers and ambassadors for Queensland, and they do a great job when they get back, just as the Indonesian alumni coming back to Indonesia from Queensland, and they are wonderful assets to the work that we're trying to do here. So really for our work moving forward, Irma? Thank you. It's very much a defend and maintain strategy in some areas, and grow as well. In particular on the brand Queensland, we'll be maintaining those relationships in lieu of no one coming to the market for the foreseeable future. Are you able to get the other slide up, or is it already up? For that foreseeable future. So what we'll be doing is really building those relationships, maintaining those relationships, telling the Queensland story to our existing stakeholders and their and new potential partners as well. We'll be collaborating more. We have 2 other BDMs, trade-related BDMs here in market. Yeah, we'll be collaborating more with our trade BDMs here as well. They cover a number of other sectors, and of course, within each of those, there are opportunities in education and all sorts of areas of that sort of education and training story and collaboration. And then there'll be that ongoing work that we do as well, sort of that one-on-one client-related work that we do, introducing companies to the market. There we go, thank you. So that's very much that maintaining and sort of defending and keeping that brand story alive here. We'll, during this period of less visits and less of that reactive work that we do, we'll be doing more of that relationship building and providing more insights back as well. So, one of our roles now very much is to provide more insights and updates and on this market situation, which is changing. We know it's changing every few months. I made the mistake of coming up here with 1990s glasses on, and what greeted me was a completely new country, and 95% for the positive ways as well. So we'll be reporting more back through social media and through our networks as well on some of those developments, but also on opportunities as well to you guys of what might be coming up here. Activities, of course, a lot of that is going to be in market as well, and Tim touched on some of that in market collaboration. That is already happening here with some Queensland providers. They've been doing it for a number of years. Griffith Asia Institute, for instance, have been doing some fantastic work with UI and the Indonesian government. And then, our goal is to try to bring in some more of the commercial capability from Queensland as well. CQU are fairly new here, are looking to do some more work in agribusiness as well, and teaming up possibly with BAPENAS and some of the provincial governments. And there's opportunity that we can bring in some training and more education through there, along with that commercial play as well. And then finally, well, we've got the training opportunities as well, as I mentioned before. So very much going out with our BDMs and thinking that whole picture. It's not just about studying and training. It's very much the trade aspect as well. And in every meeting that we have, there's often the question about training and other areas of education. So that is very much a play as well. So we'll be looking into where those specific opportunities are. We have an idea in agri and METS and everything where they are, but it's to find the specific ones with the specific companies or government entities. And finally, there's the talent program as well, where we have a number of activities planned for the returning alumni, as I mentioned, who are incredibly important to us and our activities here. We want to showcase them and also do some professional development courses for them, while also showcasing the great work that you guys do in educating them as well to the Indonesian corporates and, well, hopefully potential employers as well. So that's about all from me. Thank you very much. We're just looking at some of our questions here, and we've had a few.
I've got one, Ben.
Yes, Irma.
How do we connect with a talent program for returning alumni? I could answer that online. Thank you, Michael. Michael is from UQ, I think. Currently, Study Queensland, we're at Study Queensland, where talent program is one of our focus. We want to add value to those returning Queensland alumni from Queensland returning back to Indonesia. So one of them is to professional development that is adding value for them. We might hold an event where there will be some already successful alumni in the market sharing maybe tips and their experience and how to move forward. Maybe Ben could add more on that.
Yeah, thanks, Emma. You covered it off fairly well. We really want to improve the messaging around where these kids have all studied. They've come back into, let's face it, not the greatest of environments to come back to get a job. So, we really want to boost their employability while also showcasing where they've studied it as well. It's going to be an interesting match, and it's going to be an interesting task on how to do it as well. but we're certainly looking forward to it. So it's going to be a combination of that professional development for them coming back, and we'll be using some of our Queensland providers hopefully here in market, and then we'll also showcase, of course, the universities where they've studied, and pushing that out to the potential employers and associations. One of them, I think Irma will be working with CPA here in market to put together a program as well, given a lot of the returning students have studied sort of business, commerce related degrees. So that would probably be one of them. I'm looking, I've got an Isepa question here as well, perhaps for Mr. Tim. Have you seen any increase in interest from, well, Australian businesses that are planning to come to Indonesia since Isepa came into force in July?
Thanks, Ben. Yeah, look, I think absolutely. I think we all know that Indonesia's always been a really attractive market, but certainly we've seen an uptick across the key sectors where there are outcomes for Australian business under Isepa. I think one of the real things that SEPA has done, though, it's started to turn people's heads. From the Indonesian side, they're reading about Isepa in the paper and saying, oh, okay, there's this new agreement. From the Australian side, they're saying, we're looking at diversifying our markets. This agreement's come along. We should really be trying to explore and investigate that market. So we're seeing certainly an uptick in the trade side, but on the services side, which is probably you know, the future of our trading relationship with Indonesia, to be frank, and especially in the education and skills space, we're seeing a lot of interest from across multiple sectors. I mean, Ben touched on some of the statistics that probably reflect where most of the interest is. Frankly, it remains in higher ed and vet, but we're still seeing good interest from the other sectors as well. The universities themselves, I think, you know, in most cases have a really active and dynamic international education team. So they're very well geared up for it. I think by last count, we have 15 or 20 reps based in Indonesia from the universities. So they're doing really well. I also touched on what TAFE Victoria has done. So little things like that that are preparing themselves and preparing their providers for success under Isepa is increasing their interest in the market as well. So yeah, I think the interest really reflects where the outcomes are under SEPA, and probably reflects, you know, where the key, where Australian providers are getting most traction, that higher ed and vet space. EdTech is another one. I shouldn't ignore EdTech. Irma touched on some of the domestic players in that space, and I think, you know, those that are coming to market with a really new or novel bit of technology will be seen with great interest. But we do have to take a slightly longer view, because I think in terms of the uptake curve of EdTech, Indonesia is still sort of trying to consolidate. It's still a very fragmented market. So a lot of interest from the Australian side, but I think from the customer side, from the Indonesian side, still maybe we have another year, 2 years of work to do to really start getting traction in that space. But that being said, with all things technology, the uptake is faster than in the analog world. So don't quote me on that, but yeah, might stop there. Thanks.
Thank you, Tim. Ben, I'm conscious of the time. There's last questions on. You mentioned that Indonesian market is proven difficult. So what suggestion would you give Queensland companies to be able to get into the markets much easier? Thank you.
Thanks, Irma. It's a wonderful sound of Indonesia you had there in the background. I think, yeah, I mean, proven is an interesting word. I guess it is difficult to get into. I mean, a lot of companies do say that, but of course, once they do get in here, it can be quite fruitful as well. You know, I've been chatting to a few people who have been here for the best part of 20 years, and they've found this a fantastic place to be. I think one of the first messages is that it is the long game. We hear it a lot about Australia and Indonesia, but that is most definitely what it is. If you can get a quick win, that's great. If you can get a quick win anywhere, that's great. But that's one of them. I certainly, in my time here, I've found that every sector that we want to get into, or clients, companies from Queensland want to get into, is difficult. I don't think there is any sector at all here that's easy. And if it is easy, the rest of the world is here anyway. So they're all difficult and challenging. But yeah, difficult means what? In my mind, difficult means it's either closed off, and there aren't too many closed off sectors. A lot of areas are, in particular with services, you can come in here and operate. It's just a matter of having that long-term goal and that strategy in place, and probably a flexibility in knowing that this is a very big market that is focusing on its own. I mean, this is a market of close to 270 million people. It's enormous. So yeah, to tap into this market is to have the mindset that you're tapping in to deliver in this market. So you can think as you can think locally while really selling the message of whatever it is you're selling. I think that's about all from me. I think we've heard that a number of times. I'm happy to go into it, but certainly, yeah, it's proven difficult. But I think with difficulties, there are also opportunities, and that's why we are here, and it's probably why there's such a large embassy here and such a large Austrade contingent. We are here to sort of assist and fill in those gaps where there is that perceived market failure. So thank you. You're on mute.
So it's very important also to have a local partner, feel that you are a local also, and relationship building is very important as well. And I think that's the end of our session. Thank you so much for you all for joining today's session. I hope you all learned more about Indonesia today, and I would like to thank to all speakers, Ben and team, as well as Study Queensland for organizing this session. Thank you so much all. Bye now.
Thank you.
Thank you.